July 22nd, 2020, according to the beliefs and prophecies of Chad Daybell, this was the day of reckoning. This is what drove so many of their actions. At least it seems this is what drove their actions. Now, anyone can practice whatever religion they want. And I'm not going to sit here and criticize someone for what they believe or don't believe. But in this case, what we have to look at are how these beliefs may very well have impacted what happened to those two children, what happened to Tammy Daybell, what happened to Charles Vallow, and ultimately who is responsible for all of that. That's why tonight we're spending 3 hours looking at this, especially on this date. Because if Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell both believe that today is the end of the world, what about tomorrow when the world's still spinning and they're locked up in jail and those two children are still dead? How does it all play? How does it tie together? That's what tonight's show is about. Now, let me start here because, they're the ones who chose this day as the day of the end of the world. Well, guess what? It's tomorrow in another part of the world. Let's take a look at what's happening right now in New Zealand. And from where I'm sitting here, looking there, it does not look like the end of the world. It's noon, July 23rd, 2020 in New Zealand tonight. So from where I'm sitting, the prophecy, the prediction, not coming true, which brings us back to where we are now, which is how did we get here? Where do these beliefs come from? What exactly are these beliefs? Ted Rollins has more.
Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow's extreme beliefs about the end of the world, as described by their friends, are now clearly part of the investigation into the deaths of Lori's children, JJ and Tylee, Lori's ex-husband, Charles, Chad's wife, Tammy, and Lori's brother, Alex Cox.
We're gathering together as saints, as brothers and sisters, and preparing for the second coming of Christ. We want to be there together, and we want to be there strong together.
That's Lori Vallow on a podcast in November of 2018 discussing the end of times. A few months later, this is what Lori's now dead husband Charles told police in Arizona about how Lori's religious beliefs had become disturbingly extreme.
Her religious stuff has gone way off the deep end. She threatened me physically. She made threats about the kids. She doesn't care what happens to them. Come get them. I don't care. We won't hear that much longer anyway. And I've got my God knowledge. I can kill you if I want, anytime I want. It's just irrational stuff.
Yeah.
She needs some serious help. I want her to get help. I'm worried about her.
Both Lori and Chad told friends and family that they are part of the 144,000, which is a biblical reference from the book of Revelation.
The book of Revelation has a chapter in which it talks about how when Jesus comes back to the earth, or in anticipation of that, then there will be 12,000 elders or members from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so when you do 12 times 12,000, that's how you get to 144,000.
According to friends, Chad believes that he and Lori are not only part of the 144,000, but that it's up to them to lead the other chosen ones after the second coming of Christ, which, according to Chad, is going to happen very soon on July 22nd.
I've recently released my autobiography entitled Living on the Edge of Heaven, where I tell more about my two near-death experiences.
That's Chad Daybell talking about his books on a website called Preparing a People. The video has been removed. In his books, Daybell claims that near-death experiences, the first when he was a teenager diving off a cliff, gives him the unique ability for visions, a sixth sense of events that will happen or are about to happen. According to his friends, Chad had visions that his wife Tammy was going to die, that Charles Vallow's body had been taken over by a zombie, and that Lori's children, 7-year-old JJ and 16-year-old Tylee, were also zombies. Chad, according to friends, also believes that he's had many previous lives and has even been married to Lori in past lives on different planets. Chad told his friend Julie Rowe he was James the Less, or James the Just, one of the 12 apostles.
He started telling me about how he had an attack. He was in his living room in Rexburg, Idaho. The way he described it was that His veil was more open than it had been, and he started remembering some of his past lives.
How and why Chad and Lori's religious views became so extreme is unclear. Friends of both say something changed.
Chad's been a very prolific author, so in the past, I would say a lot of his publications are very much in the mainstream, but it does seem that recently their trajectory seems to be taking them away from the kind of center where most people in the faith would have.
Now, both Chad and Lori are sitting in Idaho jail cells waiting for trial, or, if they still believe it, the end of the world.
And again, that day is today, July 22nd. And it's not just us, in the media, talking about this. Let's take a look. We've got a photo from Rexburg, Idaho. This is a pizza joint. What's it? The Pizza Pie Cafe. It says, "The end is near. Get your pizza today. Be a chosen one." Obviously with a little sense of humor, but obvious that people are talking about it. People know about what today is and the significance in this case, in this story, and in this mystery. Let's bring in that team of legal journalists, the best in the business, back with us. Ashley, let me start with you. Here we are, safe and sound. Everything's fine in New Zealand, where it's the 23rd already. How much of a difference does this make in the case, do you think, in the minds of Lori Vallow-Daybell and husband, Prophet Chad?
Well, I have to be very careful when I answer this because neither one of them has been charged with murder. But all I keep thinking about today as I look at the beautiful skies over Connecticut, where it was a perfect day without any interruption, was that what would Lori Vallow-Daybell be thinking in her jail cell today? Because if she had anything to do with the deaths of her two children, if she did that for her religion, thinking that today was coming, what must she be thinking in that lonely cell tonight? What must she be thinking? Was she duped? Is she realizing now that she was duped? The end of the world didn't come, and she has two fewer children tonight. It's the same thing we heard from Jerry Falwell back in 2000. It's the same thing we heard from Pat Robertson back in 2007, Marshall Applewhite back in 97, Harold Camping in 94, Charles Manson in 69, and Jim Jones in 67. They all told us the world was going to end on a certain day, and it didn't. And they all had excuses for why it didn't. But now it doesn't matter to Lori because she's not going anywhere anytime soon. She just has to sit and stew in the reality that Doomsday didn't happen.
Julie Grant, how does this play in the courtroom, these beliefs, right? Is it a motive or is it some sort of a defense? How does it play? Who does it help? And what does it tell the jury?
I think it helps the prosecution, Vinny. I think it's motive all day long, whether it was a motive that proved true or proved false. It's a motive nonetheless. And if I'm a prosecutor, I'm going to use it. And I'm going to use that little clip, those words from Lori Vallow we heard in Ted's Report moments ago, where she was talking on her podcast. And she actually called herself a saint. A saint. If I were the prosecutor, I would point at her and say, if she's a saint, well, call me crazy, but I think she's a far cry from Mother Teresa, and I'm going to tell you why, members of the jury. And I would lay out all the facts and talk about the greatest sins one could commit, harming one's kids. And I have to say, Vinny, I am a little disappointed. I kept thinking by today we would see something more filed. I still think these charges that are holding those two in jail are just kind of holdover charges, if you will, for something much bigger. I thought they were going to see homicide charges on their Doomsday. But I still think they're coming. And thankfully, Lori and Chad are going to be around to see those charges one day.
Ted, has anything changed? Will anything change by tomorrow morning out in Idaho?
May not be tomorrow, but I think in the next month, maybe 2 weeks. I disagree with Julie. I think the prosecutors are playing this beautifully. They have time, right? They have as much time as they need. Both of them are locked up. Wait till one of them cracks, specifically Lori, because this is Chad's idea. It's Chad's idea that it was the 22nd the world was going to end. Chad's idea that Lori's kids were zombies and they must be killed, allegedly. I think that they're in a perfect position to now wait and see Lori Vallow. If it's not today, if it's not tomorrow, or not next week, she's going to wake up. and say, oh my gosh. In fact, she's even said it. She's said it to friends saying, well, you know, if Chad is the devil, he sure is a good one. She was in the midst of all of this, and she was second guessing it, talking to Melanie Gibb. I guarantee you she's going to flip.
Chanley, you know, the other part of this, let's bring it back to the beliefs, the religion. I mean, it's grounded in their original beliefs, right? Because Chad and Lori, both members of the LDS. What does the LDS say about the second coming, about this day?
Yeah, you're right. Lori and Chad both grew up in very devout Mormon families, were members of the LDS. And the LDS believe what most religions that believe in Jesus Christ, that no one really knows the date or time of Jesus' second coming. There is in the Doctrine and Covenants, it's one of the standard works in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It says that the hour and the day no man knoweth, neither the angels in heaven, nor shall they know until he comes. So the LDS basically says that nobody knows but the Lord God when Jesus Christ will return. But it also preaches that God revealed to his prophets the signs and the events that will precede the second coming. So that's the doctrine of the LDS. But we know, Vinny, that Chad and Lori, from those beliefs we see filed in court documents, that they had outside of traditional LDS doctrine beliefs. And, they included zombies, they included other things. So it does sort of make sense that they wouldn't believe exactly what the LDS teaches.